and with Asheebo for the Chatham NC Sports update. We're a little late today because we had connectivity problems, but hey, we are on board. The way we're going to change things up a little bit because there's a lot going on in Chatham County High School basketball. There are a lot of tournaments. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with Asheebo. He's going to talk about what articles he's got in the Chatham News and Record newspaper this week, as well as he's had the athlete of the week, but this week he's got athletes of the year. So we're going to go into that, and then we're going to get into tournaments, and then we're going to go into the power rankings and just break down because Mr. Asheebo and Mr. Berry have both had opportunities to see a bunch of the Chatham County teams play, and the stuff we were talking about 4 weeks ago. Some of it still applies, but there's a lot of activity going on, a lot of players that are doing a lot better than we thought they were going to do, and just a whole lot of stuff that's also being reinforced based upon what these gentlemen brought up 4 weeks ago. So you're going to see a lot about Coach Berry and a lot about Asheebo, very little about me. All right, ready, Asheebo? Why don't we start off with you?
Yeah, so in the paper this week, we got roundups kind of summarizing all the tournaments from basketball over the holiday break. We got Northwood in the John Wall Invitational and also Seaford Boys and in the Sheets Holiday Invitational as well. So lots of basketball action going on over the holiday break. And then also we're highlighting our athletes of the year for the Chatham News and Record, boys and girls. And for the boys this year, athlete of the year is Drake Powell from Northwood's boys basketball team. As a junior and back in 2023 of last winter, he led the Chargers to their third state championship appearance in 4 years. And he was also the Central 3A Conference Player of the Year, averaging team highs of 18.6 points and 7 rebounds per game in the 2022-23 season. And he also signed to play basketball at North Carolina back in November. And then through December of this season, he's averaged 20.2 points a game, 8 rebounds per game, while also recording 3 double-doubles. Currently, Powell's the number one 2024 prospect in North Carolina, according to 24/7 Sports. And Powell has been a very crucial part of Northwood's success, with the team boasting a 9-2 record now. 8-2 going into the new year, but 9-2 after last night. And then on the girls' side, we're sticking with basketball as well. For the girls' athlete of the year in Chatham, for the Chatham News and Record, it'll be Gabby White, a junior on the Seaford girls basketball team. And then as a sophomore back in last season, she averaged 15.5 points per game, 10 rebounds per game, averaging a double-double during this season. And she led Seaford to their first state title appearance. And she recorded 5 straight double-doubles in that playoff run in those last 5 rounds of the two-way state playoffs. And despite falling short in that championship game, she was still named the Mid-Carolina 1A, 2A Conference Player of the Year in March. And then here, she's continuing where she left off last season. She's averaging 17.1 points per game, which tops all scorers in the Mid-Carolina 1A, 2A Conference. And she leads her team in total points, assists, rebounds, and steals. So she's doing it all for Seaford and having another really great season. And congrats to both athletes, Drake and Gabby, for earning Athlete of the Year honors. And in the paper, we'll have some honorable mentions from across other sports and other athletes in Chatham County as well.
All right. Well, I want to know because I posted to you guys, are they going to get a Chatham News and Record plaque or any kind of award from you all?
I'm not sure. Yeah, we haven't talked about having that in place, but we'll see if we can. I'll ask and see.
I'll drop your publisher a note saying, hey, you need to have a plaque or an award, and maybe you, Asheebo, need to present that during a basketball game. All right, we will move on to what are you going to get into now, Asheebo?
Yeah, so we can go ahead and run down, some of what happened over the holiday break with the tournaments. Starting with the girls' side. So Northwood, they played in the First Bank Charger Classic on December 22nd. And they started where we left off from the week before we went into the break. They beat Southern Durham 48-41 in the championship game. And then before that, in the round before that, they played Southern Alamance and won that game 53-20. So they won all their games in the First Bank Charger Classic, won a championship, and dominated there. And then Seaford, they traveled to Cherokee, North Carolina for the Cherokee Invitational on December 22nd as well. And then where we left off is they had a 52-35 win over Hillgrove to end the tournament. And in that one, junior Gabby White, she led the way with 17 points. And then Jordan Matthews, they played in the Yellow Jacket Christmas Classic on December 27th, and they lost their first game to Triton 34-71. But they beat Western Hornet 46-36 in the next round and lost their final game of the tournament to Eastern Randolph 38-42. And then on the boys' side, we had a lot of action for the boys. Some really good action from Northwood and the John Wall Holiday Invitational, one of the best high school tournaments in the nation, against some of the best in the country, in the state of North Carolina. And Northwood really showed up to play in this one. They started by beating Orange in the Devontae Graham bracket 71-53. Then they followed that up with a win over Richmond, and Paul McNeil Jr., who's going to NC State for the Raiders there on their side. That was a really close one that Northwood pulled out at the end. Drake Powell had a season high 30 points in that one, and they won that one 56-53. But they also lost the championship game to Reedsville, really good Reedsville team that they could possibly see down the road in the state playoffs. Should both teams play out that way. They lost that one 53-69 on Saturday. So a lot of good action from Northwood in that one. And Coach Barry, you were there at the Richmond game, right?
Yes, I think Northwood really, really represented themselves really, really well. As you said, they went in, defeated Orange High School. They came back and played Richmond. It was a very, very good game, highly contested. And then they finished things off by playing in the championship game against Reedsville. I think big picture, when you look at everything, I think this is wonderful for Northwood because they're getting valuable experience. Although Northwood went to the state title game last year, there are several key players here now that got elevated into like the starting lineup, and they're playing big time minutes, and their production is being dependent on more and more and more. And by throwing them into the lion's den, putting them into the frying pan under this type of scrutiny, under this type of competition, win, lose, or draw, it is great for them from an experience standpoint, so that as the season moves on and we get into state tournament play, they're going to be ready. So although they fell short in that championship game over at the John Wall Classic, I think long term that could be a really good thing for them, because guys like Chad Graves, Bo Harvey, all these guys who really didn't play a significant role in prior years, you know what? Guess what? They're going to be ready to go. So hats off to Northwood. Keep up the awesome work. And one other point I'm going to make here is super congratulations to Drake Powell. Well-deserved. He's been the catalyst for that Northwood team for the last 4 years. And he stayed the course. He stayed local. He had many, many other opportunities to do other things, but yet and still he stayed loyal to Chatham County. He stayed loyal to Northwood, and ultimately he's going to go over to UNC at Chapel Hill. So super hats off for him. It couldn't have happened to a better person. The family is awesome as well. Super proud of Drake Powell.
Yep, and talking to Coach Brown after that game, after the championship game against Reedsville, he said that team is tired of being second place. So I think, like you said, they're going to have a chip on their shoulder, for the rest of the season, especially here in conference play. And if they do happen to get back to the state championship, I think that will experience really, really help them as well.
Well, no question. I'm going to throw something else at you as well. It is very hard to be at a very good team 3 times. I know we played Reedsville sometime in the summer, and we fell short. We played them again in the John Wall. We got closer. It was a single, digit game going into the fourth quarter, and ultimately we fell short. And guess what? If we end up running into them again in the state tournament, whether it's leading up to the state championship or the state championship, you know what? Northwood has got a feel for this team. They kind of know what they do. They kind of know what they have to make adjustments for, and they're going to tweak it. Whereas though if you the other team, Reedsville, they feel like, what, hey, we beat this team, we're just going to go in there and do it again, and they're not going to necessarily make major adjustments. And that there itself is a recipe for Northwood to ultimately overtake them. One team constantly sharpening the saw, trying to figure out what do we need to do to beat this team. And another team is like, nah, we beat them twice. We have nothing to worry about. We just got to show up and we just got to play and we'll beat them again. I'm telling you, it's very hard to beat a very good team, very well coached, and a very motivated team 3 times in 1 year. Just keep that, that's just keep that in mind with this.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like you said, and Northwood, they took their time and got that good experience. It wasn't just John Wall, it was also in Oregon where they also reached a championship game, and did really well out there. So yeah, there'll be a really tough out in the state tournament, I'm sure, come state playoff time.
Yeah, and let's look at that, by the way. Let's look at that because I think that's fascinating. If you look at Northwood over the last 2 to 3 weeks, every team that they played had Division I prospects. Every last team. The only team that didn't necessarily have the Division I prospects was the game that they played last night. But if you look at the level of competition that they've been up against, this is going to be a very, very difficult team to deal with. I know we played, or Northwood played, a team that was 2-time state champions in Oregon and beat them. The very next day for the championship game, they played another team that was the state champion in California. The game was close up until the end of the third quarter, early fourth quarter, and it sort of got away from us a little bit. But we were playing them very, very tough. They had 2 or 3 Division I players, and a lot of times when you have that scenario, the better players or the better team tends to play out. But the bottom line was we're playing against heavy, stiff competition, which is making the overall team better, and it's going to bode really, really well for Northwood moving forward. Asheebo.
Hey, Asheebo, let me ask you this question. I think you watched that last championship game in Oregon. I watched it, and the interesting thing about it is the shots that Northwood were making just didn't seem to be going in, whereby the opponent's shots, I mean, there was a three-pointer that the kid threw up. It bounced up into the basket, bounced all the way up, and then dropped in. And it seemed to be one of those nights where all their shots were going in versus Northwood. Northwood wasn't taking bad shots. Their shots just didn't seem to be going in. Is that just my impression, or what's your impression of that championship game? And I don't know if you saw that game, Coach Berry, because that was like at midnight our time.
Yeah, it was late, but yeah, Northwood, like you said, they did miss a lot of shots that usually fall for them in that game. But I think too, and Coach Brown touched on it a little bit last night, was a lot of times in that tournament, their kind of ball movement got stagnant. And I think that's the thing where, you're playing some really good competition, especially in that game where they had the Price brothers, Tunde, I don't remember his full name, but they had really, really good roster. When you're playing a team like that and you want to get the ball in your guys' best hands, and Drake Powell and Cam Fowler, I think a lot of times their ball movement gets a little stagnant. And in that one, I think they kind of force a lot of threes, deep balls, a lot of shots that Drake took in mid-range were kind of forced as well, trying to make some things happen there on offense. So I think in that one, it was shots not falling, but also too just kind of trying to balance, hey, let's put the ball in our best players' hands while also trying to still move the ball and get some other people involved. Because we saw that in one of the games in the John Wall tournament, I think it was against Richmond, where they only had 3 players score except for Chad at the end. It was Drake, who had 30. I think Cam had 14, and Fred had a similar total. And then Chad had the one point on the free throw. So at times, they could get a little top heavy on offense, which
well, I think this is the phenomenon I think you're seeing. When you play a really good team who can match up with you, and they may have more players than you, and they just as well coach as you, if not maybe a little bit better in certain areas, just because they have the talent. That means the team on the lesser end have to play a perfect game. And if they don't play a perfect game, you'll see things like when they shoot the ball, it seems like they miss it all the time because they have to be perfect. They have to take advantage of these opportunities because this other team is so good, they're going to get theirs. So in order for us to stay with them, we have to make sure that when we get our opportunities, we can't miss them. if you look at when a team like Northwood plays a lesser team, they might miss those same shots. But the problem is the other team can't really do anything because they don't match up with us or with Northwood from a skill perspective, from a coaching perspective. So we have more room for error against those teams. But against the better teams, this is exactly what plays out. And that's why oftentimes what you'll see is the game starts off relatively close, right? Because it's slowed up at the beginning. People are a little bit more cautious. Everybody's trying to implement their game plan. But as the game weans on, the better team ultimately is going to overwhelm the team that's not as good, and they'll start pulling away. So although in the first quarter it may have been a 8-point game, 10-point game, and so you kind of feel like you're into it. But as the game goes on, it gets the gap gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then all of a sudden, boom, the bottom falls out, and now you're down by 20, 30 points. So we have to be perfect. You got to make layups. You got to make free throws. You got to make sure that you rotate defensively. You have to communicate. You have to dive for loose balls. You have to take advantage of every opportunity. You have to be darn near 80, 90% when it pops up. And if you end up being 40 or 50, then ultimately the outcome is not necessarily going to be what you want it to be, Asheebo.
Yeah, definitely agree.
Let me throw out another one. Asheebo, you can finish up, but think also of the John Wall Invitational and how Cam Fowler, I think he was one of the top first team folks along with Drake. And the funny thing is, a lot of people go Drake, 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 Drake. But yeah, he's their prime player. But Northwood wouldn't be as good as they are without the other players. So once you finish talking up about the Portland thing, and then once you get into John Wall, just talk about the overall Northwood combination of players, because it's not Northwood hasn't just got where they are just on Drake's abilities.
You want me to jump on that first? You got it, Asheebo.
Yeah, I was just about to say, and the interesting thing about Cam, I know you mentioned Cam, Gene, is that he came off the bench during John Wall. He came off the bench again last night. I think that's a adjustment Coach Brown has made to kind of help supplement his bench production, and it really there's no drop off in his play coming off the bench. He come off and still drop 14, 15 points pretty consistently. So I think Cam is pretty impressive. Only a sophomore, and that's his second John Wall Invitational. To make the all tournament team with the Devontae Graham bracket is a huge accomplishment, and he definitely deserved it, because he was like we saw, especially in the Richmond game, he was their second option. And then they also have Fred who plays really good defense up at the top, but also can really handle the ball, get the ball to open teammates, and also create his own shots. I mean, we see Fred, he can hit from the corner three, he can hit the floater, he can get in the lane and get a tough layup and get fouled. So they really have that three with Cam, Fred, and Drake have a dynamic group that could go either way. It could be any given night. And Coach Brown touched on that as well. And we also see Jake Layton as well, who can drop 10, 12 points from three-pointers. They have a lot of threats from outside. So yeah, it's just an all-around really good roster. I think the only area they could get better is down low, and I would like to see Chad develop a little bit more. And I think Coach Brown touched on that at the John Wall Invitational as well, is that as conference play goes on, he wants to see Chad get better down low, especially defensively and rotations, because if they can add another reliable interior defender to help Drake and help get Drake off of those big guys, like when he had to guard Kendra Harrison in the Reedsville game, I think that will really help Northwood balance out their team.
Yeah, I think Northwood has an excellent team. We all know that Drake Powell is the catalyst. He's the guy that makes the whole thing go. But if you look at Fred Whitaker, he's the floor general. He can handle the ball. You cannot press Northwood, not just because of Drake, but because of Fred Whitaker. Fred Whitaker ball handling skills are sensational. He can shoot the J. He can drive. He can use his body really, really well to protect the ball and to protect the shot as he goes to the actual basket. Cam Fowler, that kid is fearless. He's skillful. He's fearless. He's physical. He wants to play. He is definitely the guy, that is critical to the success of the Northwood boys basketball team. Super proud of Cam Fowler. Smooth jump shot, can play above the rim, he's a total package. I actually noticed him last year, when he played. The other guy that I really, really like is Jake Layton. Jake Layton, again, another kid. His heart is as big as this whole school itself. He's not afraid of anything. He can shoot the ball. He can drive the ball. He can play defense. He's going to dive for loose balls. I mean, he just wants to be there. He wants to play. There's no other place other than on that team, and being a contributing member is where he wants to be. So I think he's another guy that's going to be extremely critical, moving forward. Then you have Bo Harvey. He's another guy, right? You don't really hear a lot about him, but he's doing some things, that is really, really beneficial to the team behind the scenes. He's an extra ball handler. He gets the team into their sets. He plays defense. He gets rebounds. He's doing a lot of what I would consider sneaky, under the table type stuff that's extremely beneficial to the team. And then Chad Graves, you mentioned him. Listen, I love the kid Chad Graves. He brings size, he brings a physicality. And the one thing that I really noticed about him was his defense and his rebounding. He is a defender down low. He's a rim protector. He's not afraid to challenge shots. On the defensive end, he's snagging boards. And if you get him the ball around the rim, you know what? He can do some damage down there. And here's what I predict with Chad Graves. I think as the season progresses, and certainly over the next couple of years, he's going to bud into one of Northwood's primary players. And I'm going to tell you a sleeper. It's two sleepers I got. Number one is Griffin Hobbs. Griffin Hobbs, he comes in off the bench, great defender. He does a great job in that 1-3-1. Any position. You can put him at the front, you can put him at the back, you can put him on the wings, and he plays it. The other thing is, if you're not careful, he'll light you up from the three. But the sleeper person that you really got to pay attention to, and I saw this last night, and this may surprise you here, but it's Isaiah Blair. He came in. It looks like he want to do some damage. It looks like he's trying to show the coaches, hey, listen, I'm here. And if you need me, coach, just give me a call. I got you. I'm going to handle my business. If you want some scores, I can give you that. If you want me to play defense, I'll give you that. You want me to give you some rebounds, I'll give you that. But I'm telling you, Isaiah Blair is a dark horse. And I'm telling you, over the next month or so, it would not surprise me if he has a bigger role or bigger presence with the Northwood boys basketball team.
Yeah, and he has some really good minutes in the John Wall Invitational. But yeah, like you said, over this next stretch of conference play, there's going to be a lot of Northwood games where there's going to be some blowouts. They're going to control a lot of these games, and I feel like those guys, Isaiah Blair, like you said, Griffin Hobbs, Bo Harvey, they're going to get more of a chance to really show what they can do in those games. And yeah, Isaiah showed it last night. Coming in, kind of controlling that second unit there, would get to the basket. You try to dunk at the end, show off that athleticism, but it didn't go down.
Right. But as a coach, I know that look in players' face when they go in, they're not just going in there just to kind of pass time. They're going in there to make a statement to the coaching staff to let them know that, listen, I'm here. I want to play. If you get an opportunity to put me in this game, please, coach, put me in. I'm not going to let you down. And when I look at Isaiah Blair's face, that's exactly what I see. And I'm telling you, in 3 to 4 weeks, it would not surprise me if we start seeing him a little bit more often.
Yep. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into some of the other tournament action from the holiday and run through those. So Seaforth, they were in the Sheets Holiday Christmas Classic on December 27. They lost their first game to Oak Grove 57-88, but they bounced back with a 60-57 win over High Point Central in the following round. They finished the tournament with a 71-59 loss to Westchester Country Day. But we saw some good things from Seaforth in that one, including Nate Emerson, who has really emerged as one of their best players on the team. He scored a team high 21 points in the win over High Point Central over the break. And then we also have Chatham Charter. They were in the Holiday Hoopla tournament, and they lost their first game to Eastern Alamance 42-83, but they followed that up with a 55-46 win over Cedar Ridge in the next round. And in that one, 3 players scored in double digits. And then they also closed out the tournament with a 60-43 win over TW Andrews. And they also had 3 players scoring double digits in that one. And then That brings us to the power rankings, starting with the girls' side. Week of December 25th power rankings, looking at some of the holiday stuff. We got number 1, Seaford. Number 2, Northwood. Number 3, Chatham Charter. Number 4, Chatham Central. Number 5, Jordan Matthews. And number 6, Woods Charter. So not much changing from the last power rankings we had from before the break. And also last night we had some different, some more scores from Tuesday night. Of course, we had Seaford 46 over Northwood 36. Chatham Central over Graham 66-50. And then we had Jordan Matthews losing to Southeast Alamance 20-53. So, Coach Barry, what do you think about the girls' power rankings for this week?
Spot on. Seaford has definitely solidified itself as the number 1 team in the power rankings after a victory over Northwood last night. I thought that victory there was a big time win for them, just because it was a hostile environment. Northwood, they have a lot of experience. They have a lot of they've played in a lot of games where it was really tough in a tough environment. So Northwood was ready to play. And I remember Muhammad Ali. He has this statement. He has this saying. He said it's very hard to beat a person who really believes that they're going to win. And Northwood, they came ready to play. They fully expected to win. And the only way Seaford was going to overtake Northwood was they was going to have to go out there and take it. And ultimately, they went through some turmoil. They went through some adversity. They were down by 4 points at halftime. They were down by 8 at one point in the first half. And when the second half came, the Seaford girls buckled up a little bit, fought a little bit harder, played a little bit tougher, and ultimately some shots started to fall, and they pulled away and won the game by 10 points, 46-36. So yes, I think Seaford is clearly the number 1 ranked team at this point in the power rankings. Northwood definitely is going to be number 2. I don't really see anybody beating Northwood other than when they play Seaford again. That might be, that could be a challenge for them. But listen, it's no guarantee that in the second meeting, Seaford is going to beat Northwood. If Seaford don't come to play and they just think that Northwood is going to roll over, that's not going to happen. Northwood could very easily come over and defeat Seaforth if Seaforth do not come ready to play. Then the third one here would be Chatham Charter. Yes, you would have to put them there at this point. They're having a fabulous year. And I think if they ended up playing some of these other teams, worst case scenario is, for Chatham Central, for Chatham Charter, is it'd be a close game. But in all likelihood, they'll probably edge them out. Then you have Chatham Central, Jordan Matthews, followed by Woods Charter. So I have no problem with those rankings whatsoever. I think it's spot on. Until another team beat another team ahead of them, that's where I'm going to be.
Yeah, you touched on that game from last night. That was a really close one, especially in the first half. I think, to me, when I saw from Northwood is that, like you said, they came out and they just played harder than Seaford, and they were really hitting those perimeter shots that they've been doing all year. I think they had 4. They made 4 3-pointers in the first half, which really hurt Seaford defensively because they were in that zone, and you forcing the team to shoot from deep, and they're making it. It's hard. It's hard to defeat that.
Right. So the big thing with that particular game was Northwood's first 3 shots were 3-point shots. They had 9 points off the first 3. And ultimately, I think what ended up happening was Seaford started making a concerted effort to maybe try to defend that a little bit better. And that prevented Northwood from getting those attempts up. And it became tougher for them to get some scores, particularly from that point. And ultimately, as the game went on, Seaford started hitting some shots that they were missing in the first half, and ultimately that turned to tables, and which is one of the reasons why I believe Seaford ended up overtaking Northwood. So it should be very interesting next time that they play. I thought Gabby White, Katie Leonard, we had a big game by Mia Moore. She came and hit some big shots. Peyton Collins. It was a big team effort. And I think Sydney Ballin, which was the 5, the center for Seaforth, I thought she did some significant work, gave some significant time in that game. She made at least 2 to 3 and 1 type plays, which kept the game close in the first half. And she ended up doing a couple of things, in the second half as well as far as scoring. Plus her length at the post play, challenged Northwood's post players, to the point where it made it a little bit more difficult for them to do what they normally would do. But generally speaking, it was an overall team effort by both teams. But ultimately, Seaford ended up edging them this particular game. I'm sure Northwood is going to be ready to go to the next game. It's must see TV. Highly recommend anyone who wants to see a really good ball game to come check it out in about a month time over at Seaford High School.
Yep. Definitely a really fun environment last night. Talking to some of those coaches about what it meant to have that rivalry kind of get started now that they're in the same conference, and we had 2 games at capacity, which is really cool environment last night. But yeah, on the boys side, let's get to the boys power rankings.
Whoa. Before we go to the boys side, can you guys talk a little bit more about the matchups between the players at last night's Seaford Northwood game? Because Coach mentioned what's her name, Ballard. I think there were times where she got in the way of Skylar, because Skylar's kind of similar to Gabby in that she likes to drive in there and she does that underhand toss to the basket, and a lot of times it goes in. But as Coach mentioned, Ballard was in there and had her hands up and stopped that basket from going in several times. So how do you guys see the players matching up against each other? And Coach, if this is okay with you, why don't you tell us what Coach Bird told the players during halftime?
Listen, both teams are evenly matched. They've evenly matched. I think Gabby is probably going to be overall the better player on the court when you put all the teams together. If you look at Northwood, they have those 3 guards, which is Natalia Whitaker, they have Nia Henry, and they also have Skylar Adams. They're going to shoot the threes. They're going to drive the ball. They're going to make things happen. Then you have the Glover girls. The Glover girls, they want to pound you in. And you know what? Coach Snipes, they do a really good job of getting the ball down low, and then they'll just go right at you and they'll pound you. So that being said, if you look at another team on the other side, you're dealing with a 2-headed monster. You have the perimeter players who can beat you, and you also have the post players can beat you as well. So you have to start making decisions here. Hey, what do we have to try to do? We have to defend the post, because if they get the post stuff going on, then it's going to be a long day at the office. It's going to be offensive rebounds. It's going to be fouls. Put them on the free throw line. It's going to then open things up for the perimeter players for kick out threes. If you run at them too much, they'll fake you and they'll drop the ball to the basket. So the first order of business was we have to do something to try to limit the post play. That was the first thing. Then the second thing later on, as we found out, was if you're not careful, these guys will shoot threes willingly. They have the girl Aaliyah Roberts, number 10, who is one of their reserves. She comes off the bench and she's a 3-point specialist. So if you don't watch her, she'll sit on the outside and she'll light you up. So once you have the post thing under control, then you have to start trying to figure out what can we do to contest, some of these 3-point shots. And it's a very tough, tall order. It's easier said than done. Anybody in the stands can see if the ball goes in down low, those Glover girls are going to try to pound you. Anybody can see Skylar Adams shooting threes 5 to 7 feet behind the 3-point line and making them. She made at least 2 or 3 of these in the fourth quarter, which brought these girls back where the game was still in the balance. So what Coach Bird said was, number one, we have to try to get out and do the best we can to contest threes. And then number 2, we got to play physical and we got to play tough inside to deal with the Glover sisters. And also even number 12, she came in, made a couple of baskets as well. She's the other post player. So the bottom line is, when you look at what Coach Bird would say to the team is, listen, girls, we got to put our hard hats on. We have to be able to match Northwood's energy and play with the physicality and toughness that they're playing with. Because if we don't do that, then guess what? We're not going to be successful. And I think that particular message resonated with the girls, and they went out and They played, they played tough, they played hard, and they fought, and ultimately they came out with the victory, 46-36. But as I said before, in another month, Northwood, I'm sure, is going to be extremely motivated. It's most likely going to be for the conference championship, and they're going to come in guns blazing. And if if Seaford is not able to duplicate their efforts, Northwood could easily, defeat us in that second game. So, listen, everybody's got to be on the A game in order for their team to succeed. We're just going to find out what happens when the referee rolls the ball out.
Asheebo, what's your feelings on how the individual players matched up against each other yesterday?
Yeah, Coach Berry hit it on the head. And to me, one that was really interesting to me was Gabby and Skylar, right? And in the beginning, especially that first half, Gabby kept driving to the basket. I think Skylar did a good job of upfront ball pressure. And then once Gabby did drive, I think there was a really good effort by Northwood to contest the layup, because she missed a lot of those right there at the basket that she doesn't usually miss there. And I think that really helped Northwood kind of limit C4's possessions there. They also got the rebounds down low with the Glover twins going to work down low. So I think the matchups, like Coach Berry said, were really evenly matched. I think Gabby did still have a slight advantage, just because she's so relentless. And then on the other end, she can play every position defensively, right? She can play you up top, and then she can also peel back down low and contest a layup from one of Northwood's big men and get that rebound as well. So I think it was an evenly matched game, and I think that's why it was so scrappy, and especially in the beginning, because like Coach Berry said, hey, there's not really a weakness here that we can just take away from Northwood. Can't take away down low. We can't take away the three completely. Let's just go out here and play hard. Give it all we got. Dive on the floor for loose balls, because those 50-50 balls really what mattered, and also those turnovers in the press too that really help C4 jump out to that lead in the second half.
Yeah, you hit on a couple of things here, Asheebo. I think number one, a big indicator of this game was early, because Seaford had many high percentage shots that they didn't convert, which was one of the reasons why they were down by 4 points. And I think if you look at the second half, there was still some shots that was missed, but there was a whole bunch of those shots that were made, including a lot of 3-point shots, by Seaforth. I think that was one of the keys. And I think the other key was with that 1-3-1, press that Seaforth was actually running. It is definitely a disruptor. If you go back to look at the Northwood boys, they don't necessarily run that 1-3-1 to get steals all the time. It's a mental fatigue press. It forces you to respond and react to somebody in your face full court, and you have to get the ball over that line in 10 seconds. It stresses you out. And then even when you get past the 1-3-1, you still have to face the half court defense. So now we're forcing the other team to have to context switch and do two things each time that they touch the ball. Number one, you got to deal with the press. Number two, if you break the press, we're not going to give you the layup on the back end. We're going to force you to deal with a very, very stout, disciplined defense. And when you put the two together and you force the team to deal with this over the course of the entire game, what typically happens is they'll start shooting themselves in the foot. If you go back to that Seaforth Northwood boys game, initially Seaforth was getting the ball, past the press, and it was getting into the offense. But as the game waned on, all of a sudden Seaforth started throwing the ball out of bounds, kicking the ball off their foot, a turnover. All of a sudden they got another 10, 15 cheap points because of self-inflicted injuries. That's the power of being able to press somebody, but at the same time not giving anything up on the back end. And I think that's also something that Northwood has utilized, and some other teams that utilize that as well.
Yep. But yeah, let's also want to get into some of the other games from last night and the boys' power rankings as well. So we know Northwood 75, C4 30 in that game last night. Chatham Central also got a big win, 95. Chatham Central 95, Graham 55, and that one Reed Albright had a season high 32 points. And then Jordan Matthews got the win last night over Southeast Alamance, 70-64. So those are 3 boys games we had in the county last night. And into the boys power rankings, we got not too much changes once again from the week prior. At number 1, we got Northwood. Number 2, I still got Chatham Central. Number 3, I got Seaforth. Number 4, Jordan Matthews. Number 5, Chatham Charter. And number 6, Woods Charter. Coach Barry, what you think about that?
Yes, I clearly agree with the first 2, which is Northwood and Chatham Central. The game that I want to see right now is the Seaford game with Jordan Matthews. Seaford, in my opinion, would be favored in that game. If they play to their abilities, they should come on top and beat Jordan Matthews. But when you start looking at Coach Wiley and his coaching style, and you have Brendan Oldham, and I mean those guys, man, they're going to come to play. And this game here, where they beat Southeast Alamance, that's a big indicator to me. That's a big indicator that tells me Jordan Matthews is getting better. Coach Wiley got those guys playing, because I saw Southeast Alamance, and even though Northwood, took care of business with them, they beat them pretty handily. That is a athletic, physical, skilled team. And for Jordan Matthews to beat that particular team by the score that you just now shared with us, that tells me Jordan Matthews, you got to keep your eye on them. You have to keep your eye on them, because I think on any given day, they could come out and upset any of these teams minus Northwood, right, including Chatham Central. So when Seaford plays Jordan Matthews, that's going to be a very interesting game to me. I want to see how that plays out. And as I said before, if Jordan Matthews cannot handle pressure, then they're going to be in trouble against Seaforth. But if they can handle pressure, that's going to be a very interesting game. It's going to be a very interesting game, because I know the type of Coach Wiley is. He has a couple of pieces down there to work with, and that could be a potential game of the week type situation. But right now, I would keep it as you have. I would keep Seaford at number 3, Jordan Matthews 4, Chatham Charter. They haven't, rebuilding year type year this year. Keep them there, and then obviously Woods would be where they're at as well. So I agree with this as well, with one caveat. I want to see Seaforth play Jordan Matthews, and I think that's going to solidify that 3rd spot in Chatham County.
Yeah, actually, it's 2 interesting matchups, which should be interesting matchups next Friday. Like you said, Jordan Matthews and Seaforth will be going next Friday, but there's also going to be Northwood and Chatham Central, my top 2 teams, I think, in the county, and arguably the top. Well, of course, Northwood is a top team in the conference, but Chatham Central is arguably up there too, with them in the conference. So I think, just for me in that one, I just want to see the matchup between Reed and Drake. I really want to see if Reed can continue his streak of scoring. He has yet to score less than 20 in a game this season, from my memory. So I want to see if he can do that against Northwood. I'm not sure if Chatham Central can pull off a win against the Chargers, but no, Reed's been having a really good season, and I would like to see him do it. See if he can do that against a team like Northwood, who's got multiple guys that can defend, got size and athleticism like he does. But yeah,
so listen, it's just different levels to the game.
Yeah,
I love Coach Burke. I love his players, Devontae, Reed Albright. I love those guys. I like what they're doing down there. This is probably one of his best teams he may have coached. In fact, he's actually told me that, because I went to the Triangle Math and Science game. That's wonderful. And I think from a conference perspective, minus Northwood, they have a very good shot at running the table with everybody else. Although I still want to see them play Cummings. They should be Cummings as well, but I still need to see them play them. But when it comes to Northwood, it's a different animal.
Yeah,
it's a different animal. I mean, you have Drake, and you have those other players who are solid, solid players. I mean, these guys are excellent basketball players. Drake just happens to be super, but you have excellent basketball players, as we discussed before. Plus, they have experience at playing in big games, and the matchups just don't really favor. It just doesn't favor Chatham Central. If they play them up and down style, I don't think that's going to work out real well. They have somebody to match Reed Albright. Many people that match Reed Albright, whether it's Drake Powell, whether it's Jake Layton, whether you put Ken Fowler on them. You can probably even put Fred Whitaker on them. And I think they match it really well. Other guys are going to have to step up now. But then the other guys who didn't match it with Reed Albright, guess what? They can match it with the other guys. Then who's going to stop Drake Powell? Listen, and I'm going to say this. Uh, you know, there's going to have to be a confluence of things that go in the favor of Chatham Central for the game just to be competitive. So I was talking with a coach the other day, and essentially here's the rule. I'm gonna tell this crazy story. I'm a martial artist. I'm a jiu-jitsu guy. We spar. Most people, I can do what I do. One day I spar with this black belt, 7th degree. I go at him full tilt. As I go at him full tilt, I get beat up really quick and fast and decisive. I'm like, man, I can't believe this. Let's do this again. I run at him again even harder. I got beat even worse. So from that experience, here's the deal. Anytime you plan a team that you believe is better than you or have more skill than you or better coached than you, your best bet is to slow the game down. You're going to probably still lose the game, but it'll be a slower death, and it will make it appear as if it's a more competitive game. That's the blueprint. So if you look at Chatham Central, they have to slow the game down to burn the clock, to give Northwood less opportunities to score the ball. And at that point, if Northwood has an off game, and then on the flip side, the other team has a really good game, then all of a sudden the game becomes interesting. Now let's look at the Seaford game when they played Northwood last night, the boys. Why did it appear as if the game was close early? Because it was slowed down. It started out, Seaford passed the ball 50 million times, made Northwood chase them. They weren't turning it over. Northwood got the ball. They missed some shots. They made a few. But at the end of the day, the game was close. And by the time the end of the first quarter happened, it's like, man, okay, Seaford is really surprising me here. They playing these guys really tough. No, what was happening was the game was slowed up, and it limited the opportunity that Northwood had to do damage. But ultimately, as the game kept progressing and they kept that 1-3-1 press on and they sped the game up and they forced more interactions, that's when it pulled away. That's why the game was close early. So I'm telling you, when Chatham Central plays Northwood, if they don't use this tactic, it's going to get ugly. It's going to get ugly. If they slow it up, this is their best opportunity to at least make the game be competitive. That's my take. I love, like I said, Chatham Central, but styles make fights, and they just got too many horses over there. And I don't think, I think if you run at them, it's not going to be good. So that's my take on this, Asheebo. What do you think?
No, I agree with you. I definitely I don't think Chatham Central will have enough to win that game. And like you said, I do think it's going to take a lot to make it competitive. But I just really want to see, how will they handle Reed Albright, and how will Reed Albright handle that Northwood competition, because we've seen him do it against Seaford. We that one was kind of a toss up there, but the Chatham Central went to Seaford and then got that one. And we know they play a different style. They like to be physical, but they also like to run because they're not the biggest team. And I think the biggest guy is Aiden Johnson down low. So I don't know. I don't know if they're going to slow it down just because that's not their style. But yeah, like you said, if they want to compete with Northwood just for this night, they may have to take a different.
Well, let's look at what Seaford did.
Mm-hmm.
The entire season. Seaford has pressed every team from the start to the finish. Yep. 1-2-1-1 jump press. What happened last night? The only game they didn't press at all. They
Yep.
just matched up at half court and they played that style. There's a reason why, because he understands if you press these guys, it's going to be layup city on the other side because they're going to break the press. It's going to be spot up threes. It's going to just be a complete. It's not going to give your team the best chance to win. Now, don't get me wrong. Listen, if you got the players to match up and to compete, by all means, go do it. But if you look on the other side and you say, well, wait a minute, if I run rated Mike Tyson and start swinging, how's that going to end up?
Right.
Yeah, I better stay on the outside and stick and move. I got to move around. I can't go in there and start swinging. I'm going to get knocked out. So you have to look at what you're dealing with. I'm going to say as a coach, this is generally what my philosophy is. Give me 1 second here. As a coach, at the beginning of the year, I asked myself, who's the best team in the league? Who's the best team in the conference? Okay, it's Northwood. Okay, great. If they're the best ones, what can I do with the likely group of players that I have to coach that's going to give me the best opportunity to compete and ultimately win against that team? And whatever style that is, that's the style that I'm going to employ. I'm going to figure out that sweet spot where I have the talent who can do that specific thing, and that's going to give me the best opportunity to beat that team on the other side. That's what I always do. So now when I play these teams, I'm already ready. Unfortunately, that's not necessarily what other coaches do. They simply say, who are my players? Okay, how should I play them? And I'm going to play them that way. Even though that's what they do best, but it may not be the best way for them to play against a better team, and the better team is going to overwhelm you when you play them in that manner. And that's why I think that in the case of Chatham Central, I love those guys. I love Coach Burke. He's been around for a while. Reed Albright, one of the best players he's ever had. I'm hoping that these guys compete at a high level. I'm hoping all those things. But I'm looking at Northwood. I'm looking at the experience that they have playing these state title, these state champions. And we're not even talking about Reedsville. That's the third one, right? One parent came and told me about Northwood the other day. Playing against Seaford would be the first team that they played in 3 weeks where they didn't have a D1 prospect on that team. So they used to play in these kind of teams. Now you're going to play a team that's not necessarily like that. It's going to be interesting. So I'm looking forward to a good game. Hopefully it's a good game. And, I wish Chatham Central all the luck in the world. But I do believe that if they're not careful and they don't play them the right way, it could get away from them.
Yeah, I think the neat thing we're getting into right now is we're going to see more Chatham County schools playing against each other. As you mentioned, you guys have had a fantastic conversation. We're going to have to do a hard stop at 1:30. I do want to note yesterday, and all three of us were at that game yesterday, Jeff Denny, who had one time played for UNC basketball, has mentioned the thing he likes about Drake is Drake likes to share. And I know there was one situation you asked that yesterday. It was the break. He had the ball. He could have gone in for the dunk, but Fred was to the right side of him. He passed it off to Fred, and Fred just laid it up. And I think, Asheebo, you mentioned Fred had a really good night last night. So I think that's where, and Coach Berry has mentioned this previously, as a team, they know what each other's roles are, and they're good at sharing the shot. And I think he also mentioned Griffin Hobbs. There was one time he went up for a three-pointer, didn't go in, got a rebound, went up for a regular shot. That one bounced out. He got a rebound, and then he finally sunk it in. So I think overall that team is not willing to give up. And as Coach Berry and Asheebo both said, they just wear you down. So, all right, we've got like 3 minutes. Do you gentlemen want to finish up with your closing thoughts for this week? And it sounds like next week we're going to have more basketball, and the week after. And again, as the Chatham County teams meet up against each other, you can see these two gentlemen. They agree on some stuff, but they don't agree on some stuff. So we got some more excitement coming up. But gentlemen, let's finish it up. We got 2 minutes to go.
Well, yeah. I just want to give a quick shout out to Gabby White over at Seaforth High School in the Cherokee basketball tournament. She eclipsed 1,000 points. She eclipsed 1,000 points. Super proud of her. I know she wants it. She works really hard. And I know it's going to be more successes in the future for her. So congrats again to Gabby Wright on eclipsing the 1,000 point mark.
Congrats to Gabby on that accomplishment. But also, we know there's going to be a lot of good basketball next week, of course, and we'll talk about more in the next stream. We got, of course, C4 and Jordan Matthews going to be playing next Friday, Northwood and Chatham Central. But Northwood is also going to host Myers Park that Saturday. Going to be one of the biggest games in the state this whole week. So definitely stay tuned for that one.
All right, we're going to wrap it up here, folks. Reminder, Asheebo is on Twitter, Asheebo R38. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And then the other thing I want to let you know is Coach Berry has been nice enough to be the commentator and analyst on, well, he didn't do it for the girls game yesterday, but on some of the games that I've been shooting video along with the photos. And you can find that on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Gene Photo. Already got 2 of the quarters up for the boys game, the 3rd and 4th quarter from yesterday's game, and we're going to get the girls game and the rest of the boys game up there as well. So if you want a little bit more than what you see the guys that are sitting up in the stands take videos of, Coach Berry adds a lot of commentary. And hey, thanks for all the people that are watching. I've been watching the numbers of folks who are watching this today. Fantastic. Appreciate it very much. As you heard, we're all going to be out there tracking things down for the next week or two. Lots more basketball right in the middle. Everybody, thank you for watching, and we're going to close it out right here. Hold on, gentlemen.